Welcome to It's All Geek to Me, a podcast where two friends experience popular nerdy franchises for the first time. My name is Leah, and this season, my co-host Kelly will be watching my favorite films, The Lord of the Rings, for the very first time, and I'm the expert. Let's dive in.
Welcome back, everybody. We are about to begin the final film of the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
I can't believe we're here.
And we're doing something a little different today. We're popping in before we start the movie because a couple of things. One, I have a feeling that Leah is going to be crying a lot because she already warned me that she's going to cry a lot during this movie.
Absolutely, dude. I feel like I really let the fans down in the second film. The thing is, I wasn't even that hungover. With that movie, there's just so much transition. Not a lot of like emotional moments, but this film, I'm already prepared.
There was one part in the second movie where I got a little choked up and I don't actually remember what it was, but I do remember I mentioned it in the episode where it happened.
I don't remember either. I do know the one part that I cried was when Merry was trying to get the Ents to go to war and he was like, but you're a part of this world. And then I cried from that line.
Ooh, you just gave me chills from that. So that's like the main reason why I wanted to pop in before, because I have a feeling that Leo's just going to be a blubbering mess this whole time. But also, before we start, I kind of have a bone to pick with you.
Me?
Yeah, with
oh,
you.
No.
So one of my followers sent me a tweet that was like a meme, and I was reading it, and I have an issue.
Oh gosh, I'm nervous. I also have to say, we have been getting people that have been correcting me on things.
I love it.
So if you do want to hear any corrections or just more explanation on some things that I've touched on, definitely follow us on Twitter and get that information.
At All Geek Podcast.
Also, if you have been listening to us and you have been enjoying us, a 5-star rating
means so much to us.
It would actually mean a lot to us.
That would be incredible.
We feel like we've been getting incredible feedback from everyone who's been listening. And if you just wanted to give us a 5-star rating, it would really mean a lot.
All right, I pulled up the tweet. So I don't know if our audience is familiar with Reddit, but on Reddit, there's a section called Am I the A-hole? Where people list situations that they're in, like kind of morally gray situations usually, and it'll be like, am I the a-hole in this situation? So somebody made a little joke version that is very obviously Lord of the Rings. So usually the format of am I the a-hole, they list their gender and their age. So this says, my uncle, a 111-year-old male, gifted me, a 50-year-old male, a ring before leaving to go traveling. A close family friend, 19-year-old male, told me to destroy the ring due to problematic associations with the jeweler, but the ring is precious to me and I would feel guilty throwing it away. Am I the a-hole? And now, this is a funny tweet, okay? But I'm sorry. Did nobody want to tell me that Frodo is 50 years old? What is that? What do you mean? I've been sitting here talking about how cute and little he is, thinking he's like 25 years old, younger than me, and he is a 50-year-old man. And I'm just like, oh, he's so cute and little.
Okay, I actually need to call you out because I swear, somebody pull it up. In the first episode, I swear I told you that in the books, they are 50. No, actually, I don't think I did. I said that Bilbo was 50.
That's what it was. So yeah, I have a bone to pick with you because I'm over here like, oh my gosh, he's so cute. He's so young. He's so fresh in this world. No, that man has lived almost double my life. He's old.
They have really good skincare in the Shire.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I did know that Frodo was 50. I did know.
I'm upset. I'm upset that nobody wanted to tell me because I'm just sitting here thinking like, oh, he's living this young, inexperienced life and he's going out on this adventure. No, he's 50. He should be knowing what he's doing right now. I have differing opinions.
I do like that they aged them down in the movies, I have to say.
Okay. Because seriously, that is some garbage.
Well, I'm sorry I didn't warn you that you've been simping over a 50-year-old man.
Seriously, come on. So yeah, that's all I really wanted to say beforehand is I just wanted to confront you about how you've been lying to me this whole time about Frodo's age.
I didn't want to burst your bubble.
But I am ready. So we're on to Lord of the Rings 3. The Three Kings, I think it's called.
Wait, really? That's what you think it's called?
Is it not called that? The Kings. Lord of the Kings. Lord of the Rings 3, Lord of the Kings.
No.
It's called, there's something about a king.
Lord
of the Rings
something
3,
about a king.
Something about a king. There's got to be 3 kings.
Are you ready for me to tell you?
I already know, but go ahead.
It's called The Lord of the Rings.
I said that.
Return of the king.
How many kings are there? I want to know. I'm going to start counting. Anyway, we'll be right back when we finish the first chunk of this movie, which, by the way, I don't know if anybody knows this, but in the show notes, we always write up to the minute mark where we're watching. So if you want to watch at the same time as us, it's always in the first line of the show notes. So you can always just pop in there, check it out, watch, and then join us for some discussion.
And we also posted on Twitter the day before.
Oh, yes, we do that as well. Okay, so we'll be right back.
Okay, we are back. We just watched the first 26 minutes, and can I just say, the face that Kelly had on when we got on was the saddest I've ever seen her look, and I am pleased.
I didn't cry, but I'm sad.
That's one of the saddest scenes, and every time I watch it, I'm like, this time I'll be fine. And then he says, well, we'll get to it. We'll get to it.
Don't spoil it.
I don't want to get ahead of ourselves.
Wow.
So how about that first scene, though?
That was intense. I have a lot to say.
I actually have trouble watching that scene. I feel like I have to turn away
Very
a lot because I know when all the
off-putting.
gross stuff is going to happen. It takes a lot
Yeah.
to gross me out. So get us started.
Yeah, before we even get into the very interesting flashback that we started with, I do want to say that seeing the title card, Lord of the Rings, like with the music, I know how it must feel as a person who loves this, but even as a person who's experiencing it for the first time, I feel that like, I don't even know what it's called, but like that feeling in my heart, you know what I mean?
Anticipation, excitement.
Yeah, it's like, it gives me chills.
Especially because you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, so I guess I'm in it now.
We have a fan. We have a fan.
So yeah, we start off with a flashback, and it's a very interesting one. So the first actual shot in this film is a wriggling little worm. And as soon as I saw it, I knew that that was Smeagol. And I was right. It is Smeagol. So we're getting a flashback of Smeagol when he was not what he is now, which is Gollum. And I actually wasn't 100% sure. He's not a hobbit, is he? Because he kind of looks like one.
In the last film, when Frodo is sort of trying to talk about his origin story a little, he says, you were one of the river folk. You were once not very different from a hobbit.
Okay.
That was, I think, around 500 years ago.
Right.
So species have evolved and stuff. What he was, I'm not sure exactly what his race would be called, but essentially,
Something similar.
yeah, he's a hobbit.
So basically, we're seeing Smeagol, and we're seeing this guy who I found out his name is Deagle.
Smeagol and Deagle.
And I thought that they were lovers, but now hearing the name similarity, I'm wondering if they're brothers.
I wish they were lovers. I actually believe that they are cousins.
Okay, yeah, because all the similar names that siblings and relatives have in this. Because there was one part that I was like, well, actually, no, we'll talk about it later. But anyway, so the two of them are in this really beautiful, idyllic little lake landscape situation. The birds are chirping, they're going fishing. And let me tell you, these guys are way too hyped to be fishing. There's this one point where Deagle gets a fish and Smeagol goes off. He's like, come on, precious, get it in, my darling. And I'm like, what is going on? Why are you so hyped about this? You need to relax. It's just a fish.
I don't think they have a lot going on.
Yeah, he was way too excited about it. So Deagle's pulling in this fish on his fishing rod, and they're getting way too hyped up. The fish pulls him into the water. So he falls in. He's being dragged underwater by this fish. And as he's underwater, we see him notice something in the ground, a little glint. And he grabs it. He breaks the surface. He comes up onto the land, and he looks in his hand, and it is a ring. Presumably the ring.
The ring.
So Smeagol comes up to him and he's like, oh, what do you have? And then he's like, oh, give it to me. And Deagle's like, why? And he's like, because it's my birthday and I want it. Which honestly, I vibe with that energy. I get that. But then Smeagol tries to take it, and then they have this moment. And this is where I thought that they were lovers, because they have this very sensual moment where they're like grabbing onto each other. And at first it seemed like almost like a playful, romantic, sensual kind of fight.
Like it was going to be a fight that turns into
yeah, a kiss.
not a fight.
Yeah, that's what I thought was going to happen, because they were like grabbing each other. And I was like, ooh, this is a little sexy. But then he said his name at one point, and I was like, oh, they're definitely related. So maybe not.
Not sexy. Very unsexy.
It started out sexy, incredibly unsexy almost immediately, where they're really grappling with each other. And then the least sexy part of all is when Smeagol kills him.
Yeah, he just murks him completely.
Just absolutely strangles him, with his bare hands.
He also wasn't even upset about it. He's just immediately happy he has the ring.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy, especially at first with me being like, well, I'm not actually 100% sure if they're in a relationship. And he's just like immediately over it for this ring.
Yeah.
But it's even worse that it's like a relative that he's just like, I'll just kill him so I can get this ring. So then we actually get to see the process of him becoming Gollum. So he's doing the choking, he's making the Gollum sound. We get this really nasty close-up of him eating fish, and you can like see it oozing on his teeth, which is so gross.
Yeah, I didn't watch that. I turned away.
Yeah, I should have.
It takes a lot to gross me out, but I would say like snot and spit. That's like,
spitty.
that's my
gross.
ew factor. And I felt like his whole face was just like covered in snot.
Yeah.
His eyes were like oozing.
He was looking worse in that flashback than he's looking now, I would say.
Agree.
But he says something that I actually thought was really interesting. He said, "We forgot the taste of bread, the sound of trees, the softness of the wind. We even forgot our own name." Ooh, I just gave myself chills there. So I thought that was a really cool way of expressing what happened to him.
Yeah.
So that is basically the background story of Smeagol, which honestly, I'm a little upset that it was that little of inciting incident, I guess, for him to just become this monster that all he had to do was just see the ring and then he was just immediately killing people for it.
I don't think he killed anybody else after Deagle, but I think
Hopefully.
the ring was like whispering to him and torturing him. And I think he was also tortured by the fact that he murdered Deagle.
Yeah.
I believe like he faced some repercussions for that and was outcast from his society. I don't think he just left on his own, you know?
Yeah, because he was just living in a cave, eating fish and becoming kind of gross.
Yeah.
So then we cut to Sam sleeping and Frodo is next to him, but he's awake and he's definitely uncomfortable. And he starts to pull out the ring because he's wearing it as a necklace and he's looking at it. And it's an interesting moment because we see this kind of mirror of him starting to obsess over the ring right after we see how much this ring has ruined Smeagol's life.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I would say the progression, like how it was so much quicker for Gollum to kill for the ring, I feel like it has to do maybe with intelligence levels. I feel like Deagle and Smeagol felt very childlike to me.
Yeah, so hyped about the fish.
Yeah, so hyped about the fish. But I think Frodo is much more intelligent than that. You know, like Bilbo is writing a book. Bilbo has all these maps. Clearly very intelligent. Clearly, you know, somehow schooled.
Yeah, he was just a little too simple-minded to deal with the power of the ring, and it kind of just destroyed him a lot quicker.
Exactly.
So anyway, so he's looking at the ring, then Gollum comes up, and Frodo hides the ring really quickly, and Gollum's like, "Oh, we gotta go," and Sam is like, "Oh, you didn't get any sleep, I got too much," and Frodo says, "It's not even midday yet, the days are growing dark." So I don't know what necessarily that means, if the world is getting worse or if they're just getting closer to Mordor. But then Sam gives Frodo his food and they don't have enough food left, which made me so sad. And then it made me even sadder when Frodo's like, "Tell me what's really going on." And then Sam says, "I'm rationing it for the journey home." And Leah looks like she's tearing up as I say this.
So fans rejoice. We got our first cry. That line, when he says the journey home, him giving up his food and saying, "You eat, I'm okay." And then him saying the journey home, because in the last movie, we got some insight from Galadriel that Frodo is realizing that the journey home may not happen. He's not coming home. And Sam, I think, is still a little ignorant to that fact.
And as he should be, because I think he probably values Frodo's life over the ring. And I think it would be bad if Sam knew, because I think he would then say like, "Oh, somebody else can do it." So yeah, that's super sad, but they end up on their way and they're very close to Mordor, and Gollum says there are no safe places here. So then we cut to the remainder of the Fellowship. They're on horses and they're going through what I assumed was a pretty ominous forest, but now that I know where they ended up, I wonder if that was just the Ents making their groaning noises And then we see Merry and Pippin smoking a little weed and snacking on some salted pork.
They are zooted at the moment. I think they're a little crossfaded here. They got some wine. They got some weed.
They got their weed. They got their wine. They're good.
Yeah, they're living life.
So the Fellowship sees them, and I was so happy to see that they're reunited, and everyone's kind of annoyed for a second because they're like, you guys are so lit right now. And they're like, we're celebrating.
Yeah, and they just had this massive battle. And like, to be fair, in the Battle of Isengard, Merry and Pippin didn't like physically do anything. They were just kind of chilling on Treebeard. But that was such a pivotal battle in this war. And they were the ones who made it happen.
Orchestrated it, yeah.
And so they deserve their salted pork. Like, come on.
Yeah, so one of them, I don't remember which one, says that Treebeard is running Isengard now.
That was Merry.
So Treebeard says that he's locked Saruman away, and Gimli's like, oh, let's just chop off his head, be done with it. And Gandalf says, no, don't worry about it. He doesn't have any power anymore. And Treebeard says, the filth of Saruman is washing away, which I love to hear.
There was a little conversation I heard that I never really listened to before because it was a background conversation in this next sequence we have with Pippin. But in the background, Treebeard is saying like his plans for Isengard and that he's going to bring all the young trees there.
Yeah, I wrote that down too, that the trees will come back to live here.
Yes, exactly. So here's my question to you. There's a deleted scene here. I want to at least tell you what happens, whether or not we watch it, because I don't want you to have any more questions of like what happens with Saruman and what happens with Grima. Because I will say to you, we don't ever see them again because the last moment we get with them is in this deleted scene. And I know why it was cut. I think this is the one that a lot of people have a gripe with because you don't get to see what happens to these two characters. But I will say the CGI in this scene, the setup of this scene is absolutely ridiculous. And it's just a ridiculous scene.
Honestly, so here are my thoughts. Without having seen it, I will say one thing that frustrates me about movies is in a lot of situations where there's this very strong good versus evil, there's this big scene of the villain dying, and I hate that.
Ooh.
And I love to hear that the villain just dies and fades away and nobody cares about them, and they don't have this like big moment where they burst into flames and the flames like shoot up into the universe and all this stuff. Like, I just want them to be done and gone.
Yeah, like we're not glorifying their deaths or anything like that.
That is a great way to put it. I didn't even think of that word, but yes, I hate glorifying the death of the villain.
I love it. So that means we're not going to watch the scene because what happens is they die. But I'll explain it a little bit. Like, they're on top of the tower. Gandalf is like screaming up to Saruman, which is the first ridiculous part because they're so far away, but they can like hear each other perfectly and they're speaking at like normal level.
Speak up.
I can't hear you. And then Grima ends up stabbing Saruman in the back. So Grima does get a little bit of redemption. I believe Grima then takes an arrow and Grima dies. And then Saruman topples off of the tower and gets impaled by a stake. So he does die. But I agree. Like, I don't think we really lose that much. But I was definitely curious if you were going to be like, oh, do we get to see their deaths? Do we ever see them again? So that's what happens. We won't watch it.
I will say, though, I think if you hadn't told me that, I would have been a little lost. I do like that Treebeard was saying, like, oh, the filth of him is washing away. But at the same time, as much as I hate it, it's such a huge film cue that if you don't see somebody die, most likely they're not dead.
They're not dead, yeah.
So
exactly.
I'm glad that you told me, though, but I would not have wanted to see that. I would not have wanted to see a fantastical death. I just want to see them fade away from existence.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. So then after that scene, we do see the Palantir falls as well. That's the seeing stone. Kelly just gave me a face.
I was like, what?
I feel like I'm saying it kind of wrong.
So that's what Pippin sees then in the water.
Yes, exactly. And so that's where we can continue.
So he sees that in the water. I just called it an orb in the water. And he sees it, and then Gandalf takes it and wraps it up. And this interaction weirded me out so much because Pippin's looking up. Oh, and finally, by the way, I have decided that I know which one is Pippin and which one is Merry. Thank goodness this moment happened, and that I knew it was Pippin because now I have his face committed to memory. So Pippin is giving Gandalf this look like he's suspicious of Gandalf, and Gandalf gives him this look that's like, don't say anything about this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is Gandalf turning evil or something? Like, what's going on here? So I was a little suspicious, but let me keep my suspicions. Don't spoil anything.
I did want to say one thing is, in the first film, we've seen this before.
Oh, right before that weird old
The weird
battle.
old man battle, yeah.
Okay.
So that's why he covers the thing up because...
yeah.
But I do think it was a good foreshadowing moment of what's to come.
Yeah. So there was obviously this scene after that where I lost my suspicion of Gandalf, but I hated that he was looking at Pippin like that. And there were a couple of things that he says later on in this section that I am just not a fan of, but I'm sure you have thoughts too.
Well, I think the thing with Gandalf is at this point, I just feel like he's constantly making the wrong moves when it comes to the hobbits. I don't know why he's trying so hard to protect them or keep information from them. And he knows that Pippin is curious. So why doesn't he just say, hey, don't look at this thing. Sauron can see you if you look at this. That would save him a lot of trouble, but he doesn't trust them. It's like, bro, he literally just took down Isengard. Like, believe that these hobbits can help you.
These old wizards, they think they know everything.
I know. Believe the young 50-year-old hobbits.
Seriously. Ugh, don't
you
get me started.
2,000-year-old man.
Don't you get me started. So anyway, then we head over to the King of Rohan, Theoden, and he is toasting those who died, and then everyone's feasting a little bit. And I don't remember the girl's name again. I know you're gonna get annoyed at me for it. Éowyn. Ugh, they're so similar.
I know.
But yeah, so Éowyn's actually, well, she's looking especially blonde today, and she gives Aragorn a drink, and then they share this weird look at each other, and then he walks away, and then Theoden comes up, and he's like, oh, I'm happy for you. He's an honorable man. And I'm like, what just happened that her king, who I think is her uncle, is like, oh, I'm impressed that you pulled this guy, when there is no indication that she has pulled him.
Yeah.
So I was annoyed by that.
There is some significance to her drinking from his cup and him accepting it, but like, is it a marriage proposal? No. So that line pisses me off too, because I'm like, you guys are all really romanticizing this relationship way too much. Like, he is hung up on someone else.
Yeah, seriously. And I feel
You
like
are the
everyone's
second choice.
convincing Éowyn that he's so in love with her when he's so much isn't.
Clearly is not. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a little frustrating, especially knowing what we've seen in the last movie with her little mini monologue where she talks about being a bird in a cage. Like, I want to see her be this badass warrior, you
Same.
know? I want to see her be so cool. Like, I don't want to see her lusting after this guy who's into somebody else and then making these sad faces when he walks away. I just can't deal with it.
I know, and especially because, like, going back to the first movie, obviously there are not a lot of women in this film. Not at all. In the first movie, Arwen was so badass, and, you know, she saved Frodo. She beat the Nazgul. And then in the second film, like, her power kind of...
disappeared.
Yeah, exactly. So we're not really, like, getting where's our strong female character that we need in this film.
Yeah.
That's what we want Éowyn to be.
And the way that you're talking about it makes me think that it's never going to happen. So I think that is a little gripe with the film. But there is something interesting that happens between Theoden and Éowyn. He basically admits to her that he wasn't the one who was leading the charge during that battle. And she looks a little disappointed in him, which I have to say I'm pleased about, because he really doesn't deserve recognition for what he did, because he was being really cowardly.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a good thing that he admitted that, and I thought that redeemed him. But then he immediately lost his redemption in the next scene that we see him in, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah. No, I agree with that, though, that he is starting to accept Aragorn as a leader, and if Aragorn is ruling over Gondor, they have to be allies in their two kingdoms. How about the Hobbit song in this scene, though?
I honestly did not notice the song, but I did enjoy Merry and Pippin dancing on the table and having a little drinking contest.
Well, yeah, they were singing during that.
I block out all singing.
That's hilarious that you just said drinking contest.
Well, you hear Merry being like, oh, I win, and he's like chugging his beer.
There's a deleted scene where Gimli and Legolas are having a drinking contest.
Ooh.
And by the time Gimli like passes out from drinking, Legolas like puts his hand up and kind of looks at it, and he says, I'm starting to feel something.
Oh my gosh.
Because I guess that elves can't get drunk.
He's such a hipster. Oh man. So while they're having their fun and celebrating, Aragorn goes up to Gandalf and he's asking where Frodo is, and Gandalf has no word. And at first I thought that Gandalf was a little suspicious that Frodo might have run off with the ring, but it turns out I think he's a little bit more suspicious that he was killed. But then Aragorn asks him, what do you feel in your heart or something like that? And he's like, I feel he's still alive.
And the smile he makes, I feel like he really truly does have hope. He's not fronting about it. Like he believes he sent the right person and Frodo can get this done.
So then we cut back to Frodo and that whole awful crew. Well, the only awful crew really is Gollum because I love Sam, but Gollum is having a nightmare and he wakes himself up and he goes to talk to himself. It's basically another Smeagol and Gollum conversation where he's talking to himself, but this is another scene that was filmed really beautifully. I know in the last film we talked about the angles going back and forth.
Yeah.
This time the Gollum version of himself is his reflection in the water. So it's very well done. So I think they do that really well where we kind of get to see the separation between Gollum and Smeagol. So basically we see that Smeagol is kind of having second thoughts here. And Gollum is saying like, remember, you've done this before, you can do it again. And he hypes Smeagol up a lot. Like, yeah, we're going to kill those hobbits. We're going to get the ring. It's going to be great. And Smeagol gets a little overhyped, but Gollum's like, wait, before we do anything, we have to take them to see her.
I forgot about her.
I don't know who she is.
But at the end of the last film, he says, we don't have to kill them. She will do it.
Oh, I didn't even remember that. So they're kind of listing out their plan out loud, which, to be honest, very dumb idea because the hobbits are nearby and they would definitely be able to hear it if they were awake, which it turns out one of them is.
They're literally right there.
So he's got to lead them to the winding stairs, then go up the stairs. And once they reach the tunnel and go in, that's when they won't come out because she is always hungry and she always eats orcs. But it turns out that orcs don't taste very good and she is craving some sweeter meat.
Some hobbit meat.
She's craving hobbit meat. So Smeagol's like cheering and he's like, we're gonna kill the hobbits and then we're gonna get the precious and it's gonna be amazing. Just screaming this plan out loud for anyone to hear. And of course Sam is awake, so he hears this going on and Smeagol's literally screaming like, the ring will be mine once the hobbits are dead, which is just a really great way to foil your own plan.
Yeah.
So Sam comes up behind him and you see his reflection and he hits him and then they start fighting for a little bit and then Frodo wakes up and stops him and Smeagol's yelling and he's like, oh, he's just a fat miserable hobbit, he's just being mean to me for no reason, which I was getting so angry on Sam's behalf.
I know.
And then Frodo's like, no, don't kill him, we need a guide. And Sam is like, dude, he is going to kill us, he's gonna kill us. And Frodo's just like, nah. And then he takes Smeagol by the hand like he's a literal child and leads him away, which really pissed me off.
And he gives a look back to Sam like, haha, he didn't believe you.
I know. Ugh. It's like the little petulant child that's like, I win. So super annoying. Meanwhile, cutting back to the rest of the fellowship, Aragorn's going outside. It's a beautiful night. They're on a rooftop.
I love the lighting in that scene. So nice.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful. So he sees Legolas and Legolas is looking just as hipster as I remember him from previous movies, if not more hipster because he's got his hood up.
Talking all the spiritual stuff.
Yeah, he's like, oh, the stars are pale. It's a sleepless malice. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're such an elf right now. Like, you have to relax. So he says the eye of the enemy is moving. And then Pippin wakes up and they're in, I don't know, I guess whatever lodging situation they're in. Everyone's like sleeping on mattresses on the floor, basically. And Pippin wakes up. He's looking suspicious, running around. Merry wakes up and he's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And then the creepiest thing ever, Gandalf is sleeping with his eyes open. So creepy. I don't know about you, but anytime someone is sleeping with their eyes open, I get so freaked out.
I think they're possessed.
Yeah, it's terrifying. So Pippin sees that Gandalf is still clutching that orb, which you said the name of it before, but they haven't said the name yet.
Palantir.
And Pippin wants to take it, so he replaces the orb with like a jug and he grabs it. And meanwhile, Merry's not having it. He's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Stop it. And Pippin is looking at the orb and it's basically coming to life. safe. And meanwhile, we see Legolas for a second and he's like, uh-oh, he's here. And we hear Sauron like, I see you, and being all creepy. And we have this flaming eye moment happening. Everything is crazy. Pippin starts, basically having a
writhing
seizure.
in pain, yeah.
He's writhing. He's arching like crazy. Gandalf finally wakes up. Aragorn runs in. He takes it, and then he's writhing in pain as well. So he throws it. It becomes this awful game of hot potato with the orb. And then finally, Gandalf throws a blanket over it or something, and Pippin is frozen again with his eyes open. Super creepy. So Gandalf does some magical wizard healing stuff, and Pippin is like, oh my gosh, please forgive me. And Gandalf is like, what did you see? And Pippin explains that he saw a tree and a courtyard of stone, and the city was burning. And he said he saw Sauron and he heard his voice in his head. And Gandalf is like, what did he ask you? What did you tell him? And he's like, he asked me my name. I didn't tell him. And Gandalf is like, did you tell him about Frodo? And then we cut to Gandalf talking to the men of the Fellowship and Theoden. And he's like, I trust Pippin. I know he didn't tell them anything. And Gandalf says that they need to go to Gondor to warn them because we now know that Sauron is going to Minas Tirith. And he says he wants to burn it down so that there's no king returning, which I was very excited about because I always love when there's a reference to the title of the movie.
Yes.
Although, as we know, the real title of the movie is The Three Kings. So still waiting on the other two.
Wait, I like the other one you said. Lord of the Rings, something about a king.
There's something about this king.
That sounds like the rom-com version of the Lord of the Rings.
Something about Mary.
Exactly.
And then Theoden, who I liked for a minute. I was liking him for about 30 seconds today, and then he immediately ruined all of my enjoyment of him by being like, I'm not going. I'm not going to help you guys. You didn't help me.
Yeah, he's not really thinking of the bigger picture here, and he's more thinking of just, you didn't help me, I'm not helping you. Ha ha.
He's such a jerk, honestly. We've already had this conversation when he was like, who came to the aid last time, blah, blah, blah. And he's doing it again. And it's like, listen, old man, you need to stop. You need to learn some new tricks because it's getting annoying.
Yeah.
So then Aragorn offers to go. And then I don't really understand exactly what happened here. Gandalf was basically saying, no, you can't go. And then he was like, well, actually take another path there. So I don't really understand Aragorn's part in this, but then Gandalf basically says he's going to go and he's not going to go alone.
I just think Aragorn was better suited where he was because remember, Faramir and Boromir's dad is the steward of Gondor right now.
You mean Niramir and Faramir?
Somewhere Closamir is ruling over Gondor right now.
So you're telling me that there are in fact three kings. So we have Theoden, we have Closamir, and we have Aragorn.
Oh my gosh.
So I was right. There are three kings in this movie.
So he's not a king, he's a steward. We haven't met him yet, but we've gotten a little bit of taste of what he might be like. It's been said that his rule is failing. If Aragorn, the king, shows up, he's not going to be too happy about that.
If he returns?
Yeah, so I think that Gandalf going to Gondor is just better than Aragorn going because then we're going to get politics involved. And
Fair.
I think Gandalf is trying to tread lightly. Yeah.
See, these are the little things that I'm very appreciative I have you for because I think just watching this through by myself, there are certain things that would just be lost on me. And I don't know that it's necessarily needed for the enjoyment of the film, but it's nice to have the extra information. Yeah.
Gandalf says something that in seeing Sauron's plan, they now know that Sauron knows that Aragorn is back and Aragorn is ready to take the throne, which is why he's attacking Minas Tirith, because that's where he would rule. So putting him there is just kind of like putting him in the line of fire as well. Because they want to kill him.
So ultimately, Gandalf decides he's going to go and he says he's not going alone. And it seems that he's bringing the hobbits. And Merry is super pissed off at Pippin and Pippin is apologizing, but he's very innocent about it. Like he doesn't fully understand what he did wrong.
And at this point, you thought he was taking both of them?
Yeah. So up until right when I saw that last moment and got really sad. So I thought they were both going, but Merry has to kind of explain to Pippin what's going on. And he's like, don't you understand? Sauron thinks you're the hobbit with the ring, so you're in danger now. And then I wrote, wait, Merry isn't coming, sad face?
And that's the line I start crying when he says, you're coming with me. And then he doesn't say anything. And I'm just like, oh,
it makes makes me so upset.
And I just crying to the end of this section.
Yeah, so Mary gives him the last of his weed, which is actually kind of funny. But he's like, you smoke too much, so here's the rest of mine. And then Pippin's like, well, we'll see each other again, right? And Mary's like, I don't know. And that's when I started getting upset. I still haven't cried. If I cry during this movie, I'll be surprised because I don't usually cry during movies. But this was definitely a moment that made me really upset. And then they depart, which I'm also really upset about because I hate the thought of their final words to each other being like, I don't know if I'm gonna see you again.
Calling after each other. Yeah.
Yeah. And Pippin's so upset that Mary's still not pleased with him and he is just so worried and stuff. So he's calling after him. Their relationship is just super important. I feel bad for calling them the idiot hobbits back in the day.
Thank you. I'm so glad you've come around.
Yeah, it took me a while, but up until this moment, I mean, I was warming up to them, but now I'm like, okay, they have an important spot in this adventure, and they also have an important spot in our hearts.
Oh.
So then, as he's galloping away with Gandalf, and obviously the horse, because he's not just galloping by himself, Merry runs up to the watchtower, and Aragorn follows him, and he's just watching him go, and I just drew a bunch of sad faces in my notebook for my notes, because I'm very sad.
Yeah, that part is definitely really sad. There is a deleted scene there too where Merry says something to Aragorn and he says a memory that he's had with them, and that scene, I mean, just amps up the crying for me.
Oh gosh.
But that's where we left off, at a very sad moment where
sad.
our two hobbits are being separated for realistically the first time in their entire lives.
Mm-hmm.
And we have Gollum, who has been found out by Sam, but is still with them. So Sam's aware of the danger. Frodo is not.
I mean, Sam tried to convince him, but Frodo is just not having it.
Yeah, exactly. Which is scary. So it's like Sam now knows he has to protect Frodo, sort of like against Frodo's will. Almost.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to see Minas Tirith soon. We're finally going to get to the White City that Boromir kept talking about.
So here's where I keep getting lost. How many names do these cities have? Like, what's the country and what's the city?
So it's Middle Earth is the continent. And then Gondor, which is where Aragorn would be the ruler of. Gondor is a country. Minas Tirith and Osgiliath are cities in Gondor.
Okay, but where is Rohan?
Rohan is another country.
Because here's where I keep getting confused, especially now that I know there's only one king returning, which I assume is Aragorn, because I'm like, there's already a bunch of kings, right?
Yes, but there's not a king in Gondor.
Okay, so there's just the steward.
The steward, yeah.
Okay, that makes a little bit more sense, because I'm like, what is Minas Tirith? What is this?
And the thing with that family and that particular king is that's the king.
Isildur.
Yes, Kelly.
Isildur.
Yes.
Oh, I remember.
You knew it. Kind of. You got it. I'm proud of you. But he was the one that took down Sauron. So even though there are other kings, he's the most important one because he's the one.
He's the king.
Yeah. I feel like Harry Potter is a great example. How Harry Potter was the one who took down Voldemort. Isildur was the one who took down Sauron. So his heir returning to the throne is detrimental to Sauron because he's done it before. He could do it again, you know?
But we don't stand Harry Potter in this household.
We don't stand Harry Potter, no, in this household.
But they have copied a lot of stuff from Lord of the Rings.
I feel like we've made fun of it enough about how she's just like jacking a lot of material for her own work, but we are not Harry Potter stans. I feel like that's important to mention.
And you know, people have reached out to me too online being like, you keep talking about Skyrim as if Skyrim is what inspired Lord of the Rings, but Lord of the Rings inspired Skyrim, which I do know, but it's my only frame of reference for fantasy. So like every time I see these beautiful landscapes, I'm like, oh
it's
gosh,
Skyrim.
It's Skyrim.
So any final thoughts before we continue?
Okay, my last minute predictions for what's gonna happen. I mean, I have a feeling that Gollum is gonna die at some point, and I think it's gonna be a huge struggle point between Sam and Frodo, because clearly Frodo is on the side of Gollum at this stage, and I think there's a part of him that knows that Gollum wants to kill him and wants the ring, but I think he feels a kinship to him because of the ring. He understands and he wants to think he's worth saving because he wants to think of himself as worth saving.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though he is going to die, which is going to be really upsetting for me, but I have come to terms with it. I'm accepting it. So I'm assuming he's going to die at the end of the movie and I'm going to be really upset.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
If he survives, I might be slightly annoyed because we have all this buildup leading for him to die. And if he magically survives, I'm just going to be like, all right, so there were no stakes at all. But I do know that Leah loves like the happily ever after storyline in fantasy. So maybe it'll happen.
We will see. But check back next week. Next Thursday, we will return to the king.
The three kings, all three of them.
And thank you for listening. Thank you for enjoying. See you next week.
Bye.
You've been listening to the It's All Geek to Me podcast, hosted by Leah and Kelly. Make sure to hit subscribe on your favorite podcast player and give us a rating. You can also find us on Twitter at All Geek Podcast. New episodes drop every Thursday. See you next week.